I was standing by the window with my morning coffee, sleepy, unbothered, wrapped in my red robe, when my eyes froze on a single headline. I didn't feel the mug falling from my hand. I didn't hear it shatter on the floor. All I heard was the sound of my heartbeat pounding so loudly it drowned out everything else. Because the headline on that newspaper, the one I casually picked up while stretching in the morning sunlight, was about him. And the moment I read it, I knew my entire life, every promise, every smile, every soft lie he ever whispered, was about to burn. The headline didn't just reveal a betrayal. It exposed the man I loved as someone I didn't know at all. And before the day would end, I would uncover a truth darker than anything I expected. I've always been a morning person. Most women I know struggle to open their eyes before 8, but not me. There's something calming about the beginning of a day. Quiet, warm, fresh, before the world starts asking for pieces of you. That morning, sunlight was dripping through the window like honey. I wrapped myself in my red satin robe, tied it at the waist, and padded barefoot into the kitchen. The truth is, I wasn't expecting trouble, not even a hint of it. I poured my coffee slowly, the rich smell filling the room, and grabbed the newspaper from the dining table. I wasn't even planning to read it. It was just habit, something to flip through while the caffeine settled in. I walked to the window, took my first sip, and unfolded the paper lazily. Nothing could have prepared me for what I saw. Halfway down the front page, in bold black letters, so sharp they felt like a stab to the chest, local businessman under investigation for fraud, anonymous woman claims his real identity is hidden. At first, my brain refused to connect the dots. There are thousands of businessmen, hundreds under investigation every year. This headline could have been about anyone. But then I saw the photo, blurry, taken from a distance, a man stepping out of a dark car. Tall, broad shoulders, that familiar watch glinting on his wrist. My stomach dropped. It was him, Ethan. The man I'd been dating for 10 months, the man who told me he traveled for consulting work, the man who insisted his income was private because of clients, the man whose smile always seemed a little too perfect. I blinked hard, twice, 3 times, but the words didn't disappear. The heat from my coffee didn't reach my hands anymore. My fingers went numb. My first thought wasn't anger or even fear. It was denial. No, this has to be some mistake. Someone who looks like him, someone using his car, anyone but him. But denial is a weak shield. Truth has a way of cutting right through it. Because as I read further, every detail lined up. The timing, the city, the description of his shadow company, the mention of an anonymous woman who knew him under a different name. My breath stalled. Different name? Anonymous woman? A cold wave of dread washed over me. He lied to me, I whispered into the empty room, feeling the words crumble against my tongue. But lying wasn't even the worst part. It was the feeling that this headline wasn't just a story. It was a warning. And something deep inside me knew this was only the beginning. When someone betrays you, your mind runs backwards. You start replaying every moment, every conversation, every tiny detail you dismissed. Suddenly, all the puzzle pieces you ignored start clicking into place. That morning, holding that cursed newspaper, I felt every memory sharpen like broken glass. There were signs, too many signs. I had just pretended not to see them. The first one came to me instantly. The night he forgot his wallet at home, even though he always bragged about being organized. He laughed it off, said he was tired from a long day, and I had brushed it aside. Then there were his business trips, always sudden, never planned. His phone calls taken in the other room, his refusal to introduce me to his colleagues. His insistence that I never visit him at work because the office isn't a place for someone like you. I should have questioned that more. Someone like me? And then there were the gifts. Not expensive ones, but strange ones. One time he bought me a ring. Beautiful, delicate, gold. But the engraving inside didn't make sense. E to J. My name doesn't start with J. When I asked about it, he said, "Oh, the jeweler must have messed up. I'll get it fixed." He never did. Another time, I found a boarding pass in his coat pocket, a flight he never told me about. He said it was business, but the return date didn't line up with the week he claimed he was gone. And worst of all, there was the night he showed up at my apartment with his shirt torn and a small cut on his forehead. He said he slipped. I didn't push. I hugged him, cleaned the cut, made him dinner. If I had looked in his eyes that night, really looked, maybe I would have seen the truth. But I didn't. Because love makes you blind and trust makes you foolish. The headline was just the spark. The fire had been waiting for months. I sank onto a chair, the newspaper shaking in my hands. My entire relationship felt like a lie unraveling at my feet. And somewhere deep inside me, under the shock, the confusion, the aching disbelief, a new feeling was rising. Not fear, not heartbreak, but determination. If Ethan had lied to me, I would find the truth myself, no matter how dark it was. The newspaper wasn't the end. It wasn't even the real beginning. Because 5 minutes after I read that headline, my phone buzzed with a message I knew I was never supposed to see. I didn't recognize the number, but the message was just one sentence. "He's not who you think he is. Check the envelope under your bed." My blood ran cold. Whoever sent that message knew me, knew my home, knew my relationship. I didn't reply, couldn't reply. My hands were trembling so violently, I nearly dropped the phone. I rushed into my bedroom, heart slamming against my ribs, and fell to my knees beside the bed. For a moment, I hesitated. What if there was something under there? What if this was bigger than a lie? What if I was stepping into something I couldn't step back out of? But curiosity and fear are powerful motivators. I lifted the bed skirt and reached underneath. My fingers brushed paper. An envelope. Unmarked. Thin. Cold. Stored there recently. No dust, no wear. I pulled it out with shaking hands and ripped it open. Inside were photos of Ethan with another woman at dinners, holding her hand, entering a hotel. And in every photo, he wasn't called Ethan. He was smiling, holding a different wallet, wearing a different name badge. Jared Collins, Senior Financial Director. Jared. J. The engraving on the ring. My throat tightened. I felt like I was going to be sick. But the nightmare didn't end there. Along with the photos was a slip of paper. Small, torn, but unmistakably his handwriting. A name, a location, a date. Warehouse 19, tonight, 11 p.m. I felt the air leave my lungs. Whatever Ethan or Jared was hiding, he was meeting someone tonight. And if the headline, the photos, and the message were all connected, then this night was going to reveal everything. But here's what I didn't realize. Someone knew I would read that paper. Someone knew I would find that envelope. Someone wanted me at that warehouse. And they knew I wasn't the kind of woman who turned away from the truth. Not anymore. I barely slept after that morning. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that headline again. The same name repeating in my mind like a curse. Lucas Haro. The stranger from the clipping. The man whose world fell apart after what she exposed. The one who said the woman destroyed him. And the face, blurred in the photo, yet familiar in a way that made my stomach twist. All day, the unease sat in my chest like a stone. I wandered around the cottage trying to distract myself, watering my plants, wiping clean counters I had already wiped, pretending everything was fine. But the truth was simple. Nothing felt fine anymore. By afternoon, the sky outside had turned a dull gray, the kind of cold British gloom that sits like a weight on your shoulders. I made myself a cup of tea, but my hands were shaking too much to lift it. It wasn't just the headline anymore. It was the feeling that someone inside that story was reaching out to me, pulling me, calling me. When the kettle clicked off again, I finally whispered the question that had been ringing in my head all day. What if this has something to do with me? It sounded insane, but so did the fear crawling under my skin. I picked up the newspaper again. My eyes scanned the article, slowly this time, carefully. Horror. Scandal. Anonymous whistleblower. Destroyed reputation. Destroyed marriage. Destroyed life. Destroyed. There was something almost poetic about the word, and yet it left a coldness in my chest. Then I froze. Because halfway down the article, hidden in one bland sentence, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Local law enforcement confirmed that a woman, described as late 30s to early 40s, came forward with accusations that ultimately forced Haro to resign. A woman, not named, not pictured, just a woman who had vanished from public memory. Why did that disturb me so much? Why did I feel as if that anonymous stranger's shadow was brushing against my own? I held my breath without meaning to. And then suddenly, loudly, someone knocked on my door. A sharp, frantic knock. My heart slammed against my ribs that I almost dropped my mug. I wasn't expecting anyone. No one ever came unannounced, and the cottage stood too far from the village for casual drop-ins. Another knock. Harder. "Hello?" a man's voice called. "Is anyone home? I just want to ask." I didn't move. Couldn't. The voice felt wrong. Too determined. Too direct. My fingers curled tighter around the warm ceramic mug as the knocks continued. But eventually they stopped. Silence returned, like a thick blanket. I waited. 1 minute? 2? 5. Finally, I gathered enough courage to step toward the window and peek from behind the curtain. A tall man, broad shoulders, dark coat. He was walking away from my house, but slowly, as if he expected me to call him back. I didn't recognize him, but something inside me whispered, "He does." My pulse thundered as I stepped back from the window. What did he want? Why now? Why today? The day the universe had already shaken me once. I forced myself to breathe. And then, half an hour later, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I know what you saw." My hands went ice cold. And that was the first moment I wondered if I should have never touched that newspaper at all. I stared at the message for what felt like an hour. "I know what you saw." It was impossible. I hadn't told anyone about the headline. I hadn't spoken to a soul, and the paper was printed this morning. The only copy I owned was still folded on my kitchen counter. How could someone, anyone, know I read it? My throat tightened as the possibilities rushed in. Maybe the man at the door saw me through the window. Maybe he left and then texted. Maybe... No. My number wasn't public. My name wasn't public. My past wasn't public. I had taken years, painful, meticulous years, to disappear into this quiet village, to blend in, to be the woman who minded her garden, walked to the bakery on Saturdays, and rarely spoke more than polite greetings. My entire life here was built on one thing: anonymity. And the text shattered that illusion like glass. Another message came. "We need to talk." I frowned, forcing myself to breathe in through my nose, out through my mouth. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe he had the wrong number. Maybe a third message. You're the only one who understood what he really was. That ended all my denial. Because deep, deep in my chest, behind layers of years and silence and healing, I knew exactly who he was referring to. It wasn't Lucas Haro. No, it was my he. The man whose lies had shaped my nightmares. The man who taught me silence. The man I had escaped. My ex-husband. My hands trembled as I typed back a single message. Who are you? The reply came instantly, almost too instantly. Someone who knows the truth he hid. Someone who knows what he did to you. Air left my lungs in a slow, shaky breath. No one knew. No one. I never told the village, never told the police, never told my family. The only people who knew were me and him, and he would rather burn documents, threaten lives, and rewrite history than let the truth out. So how? Another knock. I jumped. Not again, not now. This knock wasn't frantic like before. It was softer, measured, almost apologetic. I moved to the side of the window, peeking with only one eye. A woman, late 20s, dark hair pulled back, wearing a professional coat, holding a small leather folder. She didn't look threatening, but neither did I, and I knew what a quiet woman could hide. I waited. She knocked again, then sighed and slipped a card under my door before walking away. I didn't go to the door until I heard the faint crunch of gravel as her car drove off. The card was simple. Name, phone number, no company logo. Just 5 words printed under her name. We need to discuss your safety. My breath hitched. Mine? Why mine? It felt suddenly, sharply, like the walls of my carefully rebuilt life were closing in, and I wasn't sure I could keep holding them up. The sun had set before I gathered enough courage to sit down with the card and the text messages, placing them on the table like pieces of a puzzle. I needed clarity. I needed answers. I needed one moment of steady breathing. But my thoughts spiraled like leaves in a storm. The woman's voice from earlier echoed in my mind. We need to discuss your safety. Safety from whom? From what? I picked up the card again, running my thumb over the smooth surface. Her name was unfamiliar, but her presence, that strange urgency, lingered. I opened the leather folder she left on the doorstep. A single sheet of paper, a photo clipped to the top. My heart stuttered. It was the same blurred figure from the original newspaper article, but this time, the image wasn't blurred. It was clear, sharp, unmistakable. And the face I saw, the face tied to Lucas Haro, was a face I knew far too well, because it belonged to someone from my past. Not my husband, not my son, not a stranger, but someone whose betrayal had once cut me open in ways silence could not heal. Someone whose lies had shaped more than one ruined life. Someone I never thought I would see again. As my vision blurred with shock, another text buzzed on my phone. Now you understand. I didn't. Not fully. But I knew one thing. My past wasn't just knocking, it was kicking the door down. That night, sleep refused to touch me. I kept hearing footsteps outside the house, though I knew it was probably the wind dragging branches across the stone walls. I kept seeing faces from my past, people I'd buried in silence, memories I'd tucked away like old photographs. One of those faces now stared at me through the security of the folder the stranger had left, and with every passing hour, I felt a new truth rising like a tide inside me. That article wasn't random. That visitor wasn't random. That text wasn't random. Someone wanted me aware. Someone wanted me afraid. Someone wanted me to remember a past I worked so hard to forget. And the most terrifying part, the most unsettling part, The part that kept my breath shallow and my hands cold was the slow, dreadful realization that maybe he wasn't done with me. Not my ex-husband, not Lucas Harrow, but the third man. The one I never imagined would be tangled in this. The one whose return would shatter every bit of peace I built. The one who smiled as he lied and lied as he destroyed. And just before dawn, just when I started to drift into uneasy sleep, my phone buzzed again. One final message. We both know he's coming. My heart whispered the only reply I couldn't bring myself to send. God help me. I think you're right. I didn't sleep that night. The house felt heavier than it ever had, like the walls themselves were tired of holding secrets. Every time the wind brushed against the window, I jolted awake, half expecting another headline, another truth I wasn't prepared to face. Morning came slowly, gray and cold, the kind of British morning that seeps into your bones. I walked downstairs, each step echoing like a reminder of the life I'd lived inside this house. Quiet, obedient, almost invisible, but not anymore. On the kitchen table was the newspaper I had folded shut the night before. That same headline, the one that had destroyed his lies, stared up at me like a wound that refused to heal. I traced the ink with my fingers, and then I saw it. A second article, smaller, tucked into the corner, but his name was on it. And mine. Not directly, but hidden between the lines. Enough for me to understand that someone inside his world, someone he trusted, had finally spoken. Someone who wanted me to know everything. My heart thudded. There was only one person who could have leaked this. I grabbed my coat, stepped out into the cold, and walked toward the door at the end of the garden. The old shed he always kept locked. He used to tell me, "There's nothing in there for you. Don't open it." But the truth was simple. He didn't want me to find what he'd been hiding. My hands shook as I turned the rusty key I found in the drawer. The lock clicked. The door creaked open. And inside was the life he'd built without me. Files, letters, photographs, receipts, payments, documents with names I didn't recognize. And then, a journal. His handwriting. When I opened the first page, the truth hit me so hard I nearly dropped it. It wasn't just an affair. It wasn't just lies. It was a whole second identity. A future he was building without me, without our daughter, without the woman he promised to love. Some pages were crossed out violently, as if he didn't want the words to exist. Others were circled, underlined, highlighted, reminders of the life he planned once I finally broke. I sank to the floor. All those years he called me weak, he was the one afraid. Afraid of me discovering who he really was. Afraid of the truth I now held in my shaking hands. And then, footsteps. Someone had followed me. "Don't panic," a voice said from behind me. Deep, calm, familiar. I spun around. It was the man from the newspaper office, the reporter who'd handed me the first article. Only now, he wasn't wearing the same guarded expression. He looked almost relieved. "You found it," he said quietly. I stepped back. "How do you know what's in here?" He hesitated, then removed his cap. That's when I recognized him. He used to work with my husband years ago, at the company they both helped build. He was younger then, optimistic, kind, almost shy. Now he looked like someone who'd seen too much and spoken too little. He tried to warn me, but he made everyone sign contracts. He threatened jobs, families, reputations. My voice cracked. Why now? Why publish all of this now? Because he hurt the wrong person, the reporter said, and for the first time, he doesn't have the power to bury the truth. He stepped closer, careful, gentle. "He won't come here, not today. Everything is collapsing around him, the company, his partners, his image, and someone finally had the courage to speak on record." "Who?" He paused. Then he gave me the answer I never expected. "Your daughter." My breath caught. My daughter. The same girl who once believed every lie her father told. The one who sided with him, who left with him. She was the one who exposed him? How? Why would she? "She saw him hurt you one too many times," the reporter said softly. She saw the bruises you tried to hide, the tears you tried to swallow, the silence you lived in. A tear slipped down my cheek. All these years, I thought I'd lost her. I thought he'd taken her from me. But she had been watching, learning, understanding. And now she had given me the only thing I never thought I'd have again, a voice. The sun was setting when I finally walked out of that shed. The reporter stayed behind, gathering evidence, preparing a case that would expose everything. But I walked to the gate, because standing outside was my daughter. She looked older, tired, eyes red from crying. "Mom," she whispered. I didn't move, neither did she. And then slowly, she stepped forward. "I'm so sorry," she said, tears spilling over. "I should have believed you. I should have stayed. I pulled her into my arms before she could finish. She clung to me like she had when she was a child, afraid, small, trembling. "I thought you hated me," I said against her hair. "No, Mom, I hated that I didn't know the truth." We held each other for a long time. Then she said the words I had waited years to hear. "You don't have to stay silent anymore." The next morning, the truth went public. Every newspaper, every channel, every website. His lies, his second life, his manipulation, his cruelty, his financial fraud, his emotional abuse, all exposed. He tried calling me. I didn't answer. He tried texting me. I blocked him. Then he tried coming to the house. That's when I stepped outside. He froze when he saw me. For the first time in years, I wasn't shaking. I wasn't quiet. I wasn't afraid. I looked him straight in the eyes, and without saying a single word, I pointed at him. The neighbors watching, the reporters filming, my daughter standing beside me, the police walking up the path. That simple gesture, that small moment, was the loudest thing I had ever done, because finally, everyone saw him for who he truly was. And they saw me too. Not the quiet wife, not the silent shadow, but the woman who survived, the woman who rose, the woman whose silence had never been weakness. It had been power. He never understood. Power he could never take from me again.